first story of tonight is, of course, the Toronto St. Paul's by-election. Yeah, this was it's tonight is going to be all red meat for me, basically, because you guys know how much I love talking about politics, and this is the most exciting week in Canadian politics in a long time. So the Toronto St. Paul's by-election, it's for those of you who maybe you're not from Ontario or you're not from Canada even, just let me give a brief explainer on how kind of Canadian politics and the structure works, right? So in Canada, we have a parliamentary system. So it's a parliament made up of MPs. So MP stands for Member of Parliament. So each MP represents a district. And then I think there's 338 MPs or seats in the parliament in total. And the political party with the most seats gets to select their leader, and that leader becomes the prime minister. So in a sense, that's how it works. So right now, it's the Liberals who have the most amount of seats, and the leader of the Liberals is the current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. As some of you may have heard or seen here and there, the Liberals are not doing very well in the polls right now. And this Toronto by-election, what happened was, in this particular area in Toronto, the MP who was like representing that district, St. Paul's, she retired. And when an MP retires or dies in office or whatever, or they just need to be replaced, there's an election, but just for that district. So it's called a by-election, right? So that's what happened in Toronto, St. Paul's. Now, just to give a little bit of background before I explain kind of what happened with the by-election that occurred this week, this district is in pretty much like downtown Toronto, like a little bit north of the heart of Toronto, but it's like in there, right? And this district has not elected anyone else besides the Liberals for the past 30 years. So yeah, the last time there was a person of another party that represented this district, I wasn't even born, right? So this is the first time in my lifetime that, let's look at the results, right? So the CPC, Conservative Party, they won the district. They won this by-election with 42.1% of the vote. And this came ahead of the Liberal Party, which only won 40.5% of the vote. So the person who won, his name is Don Stewart, and he kind of ran his campaign on this message of, like, a lot of things are broken and people are unhappy, and crimes are going up in Toronto. Let's fix it, right? And just to give you an idea of how big of a margin change this was, I believe that this was a district that the Liberals won in the 2021 election by like 24% or something like that. Like they got 24% more votes than the Conservatives, and so the Conservatives were in a distant second in 2021. And there was a lot of like speculation on, because I don't think Conservatives were actually expecting to win. Like they were talking to the campaign managers for like one of the, like, I think the campaign manager for Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservatives, like for the whole Conservative Party. And she was like visiting the district and giving like speeches and trying to show her support for Don Stewart, who is the candidate in this district. And she was saying how, if they were like, she didn't expect to win. And if they just got close, like if they lost by like, 5% or even like 10%, that would still show a massive boost in the poll numbers for the Conservatives, and it would show a massive increase in support. But yeah, obviously a lot of people weren't expecting the Conservatives to win, but they did. So let's scroll down to the second picture, and you can see that this is a map of the current kind of breakdown between the districts of Toronto, and the only one that is blue is St. Paul's, Toronto, right? The by-election that just happened. Literally every single other district you can see in the like immediate Toronto to North York region, they're all Liberals everywhere. Again, St. Paul's was a safe Liberal seat, quote unquote safe, or they thought it was safe for the past 30 years, and this is no longer the case. So many pundits were saying that this election is really a referendum on what people think of Justin Trudeau, and obviously are not satisfied with Trudeau right now, and they want him to resign. Basically, they want him gone, or they just want an election in general. But despite this loss, Trudeau has rebuked those claims and refused to step down. And we can talk about that in more detail later. But maybe the last piece of kind of data that I wanted to provide you guys before we jump into the second part was that if you guys recall, back in 2011, so this was the Stephen Harper versus Michael Ignatieff, who was the leader of the Liberals at that time. Stephen Harper's was the reigning prime minister, who was the leader of the Conservatives, right? Versus the NDP's Jack Layton, who was a very well liked leader and like probably the most popular leader of the NDP of like all time. I don't know about all time, but like of recent history at least, right? So that election really shook things up. And Michael Ignatieff, the leader of the Liberals at that time, he was very not well liked. And he led the Liberals to one of the worst defeats in modern history, right? I think they only won like 20 something seats in the entire country. But despite how poorly Michael Ignatieff performed, he still won St. Paul's in 2011, and Justin Trudeau just lost it. So this just goes to show the gravity of the situation and how like completely shocking and abnormal this was for the Conservatives to not only stand a chance of winning this district, but actually doing it. And I'll say one last thing: I was watching this election as the results were coming in, and they were really slow to count the votes, by the way. So like they were counting like all the way till like 3 or 4 a.m. and I couldn't stay up any longer because I had work the next day. So I was like, I gotta go to sleep. And like when I first started watching, I think it was like 10 or 11 at night when the results first started kind of streaming in. The Liberals were leading by like 10%. And I was like, okay, if the Conservatives can get in within 10% of like, if they could lose by less than 10%, I would call that a win for the Conservatives. And then like the Liberal, like, campaign people, when they were interviewing them, because I was watching the news and they were interviewing them at the campaign headquarters, they were like, yeah, like, we expect to win, but we understand that the Conservatives are coming like up and coming in the polls, and if we can win by 10%, I think that's good. I think that's still like a little bit concerning, but I think it's bearable and it's understandable, right? And that was kind of the narrative at 10 o'clock, right? And by the time that like midnight rolled around, I think at that point it had gone to like within 5% of a difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives. And then the Conservatives were like jumping up and celebrating. It's like, oh, we almost won St. Paul's. Like, look, we came in within 5%. This is amazing. Like, we lost by 25% last time. We came within 5% this time. Like, people are mad at Justin Trudeau, blah, 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 right? And by the time I went to sleep, and this was like 3 a.m., the Conservatives were like trailing the Liberals by like around 2% or like 1 to 2%, something like that. And I was like, okay, they're gonna lose, but only by a margin. And I think that is still gonna count as a win for the Conservatives. And then by the time I woke up, the Conservatives won by like 1.5%, right? So this just goes to show like how crazy this situation is. And again, I keep on repeating myself, but I can't help but emphasize once again that this was absolutely shocking victory. So before I move on to the second part of the story, I think I've given enough background on this situation now. And now let me toss the question back to you guys. So there's not really it's not really a major question. I just kind of wanted to get your reactions to it. What do you guys think about this situation? Just kind of like, top of your head thoughts. Who wants to take it away?
Yeah, no, I'll take it away, I guess. So in like a span of decades, I think this is completely nuts for something of this scale to actually happen. for a complete like switchover over a city of Toronto, which is majority like liberal, to be able to go into the conservative space is completely nuts for sure. I think it just shows the gravity of the entire situation of our home and native land of Canada. And I think I heard that Justin Trudeau is still currently trying to campaign for his prime minister position, but it definitely doesn't paint a really good picture for him. So, in the coming days moving forward towards the election next year, I think he has to definitely watch out. And I guess he could try to do whatever he can to like save himself, but it seems like this is a conservative majority shift over, and it's going to be hard to recover on his end. So we'll see and wait for what is to happen next.
Yeah, before I toss it to Tristan, let me just add one thing, right? So I know we have some American viewers who, may not understand Canadian politics well enough. So let me put an analogy, like for America, right? This would be like if, uh, if there was a by-election in downtown San Francisco, and then somehow the Republicans won that district in downtown San Francisco. Like that is like kind of the American equivalent of that. And again, like if I were to say to you, if the Republicans came within 5% of winning a district in downtown San Francisco, you would already say that that is nuts, right? But this is the result that we just witnessed in Toronto St. Paul's, is that the Conservatives won, which means that the equivalent of that would be like if the Republicans actually won a district in downtown San Francisco. So like that's just kind of just to put things in perspective. Let me toss it to you, Tristan.
Yeah, I think it's pretty apparent to me that the Liberals have lost the confidence of the Canadian people. And I think that this is a pretty obvious indicator of that fact, with the Liberals losing such a safe seat. And I understand that some of the interviews and stuff have been like, there's no such thing as a safe seat, but there are certainly seats that are safer than others, right? So the fact that they lost so aggressively was not a good look for them, and it really emphasizes the fact that the Liberals have not got our confidence, or at least the majority of the people in the country's confidence anymore, and that the coming election will likely lead to a change in leadership between the two parties, as I think we were kind of all expecting. But I think it's pretty clear to me that that's what's upcoming.
So maybe I should save this question for later, but maybe I should also just ask it now. So uh, I was planning on saving this for later, but Tristan, do you think that there's anything that Trudeau can do to redeem himself at this point? Like if you were Trudeau and you wanted to stay on, and you're just like looking for options, like do you really have any options, or what would you do? Or is there a pathway that you could see him like clinging on to power after the next election?
To redeem himself, like in terms of the eyes of the Canadian people, I don't think there's much he can honestly do, because I think that the Canadian people have pretty much just gotten sick of him, and it's pretty clear that you know regardless of his performance, even that people are generally disgruntled with the length of service that he's had, and the fact that the country has gotten worse during his service, right? So I would say that regardless of whether or not he tries to bribe them with a UBI or something to that effect, I don't see how he will be able to convince enough people to not go with their "I'm sick of Trudeau, I'm not voting for him," and I think that he doesn't really have much of a chance on that front. And I think that the best that he could hope for is if they did do something that was able to convince people to vote Liberal again, that maybe they could prevent the Conservatives from getting a super majority and instead get a majority, or maybe even a minority. But honestly, I don't really think the Liberals can do much. And I think that the NDP have basically placed themselves in the same basket as the Liberals, which means that I don't see them doing particularly well either. So from that perspective, the cons are really well situated to take it in the future. And I just don't see Trudeau convincing anyone to, or not anyone, but convincing enough people to vote for him, regardless of what he does, because I think that everyone's just sick of him. And even if swapping to the Conservatives won't improve the country, I don't think that most people are inclined to keep Trudeau in, given his track record of the country declining while he's been in power, right? So I think that, regardless of how much of that is his fault, or it is or isn't his fault, I think that it's difficult to convince people to keep voting for a leader who has not improved their life whatsoever, and in fact made their lives worse.
Yeah, good points. Dom, do you have anything you want to say? Like, what do you think Trudeau can do to possibly try to redeem himself, or is there nothing he could do?
I feel like it's more so like there's probably nothing that he can do because I think he's had like about like a decade of just bad history and like bad decision making, etc. And it would be pretty hard to compensate in like 1 year's time for all the bad efforts that he's done before. And like what Tristan said before too, people are just sick and tired of him. And if PP gets elected, and then there's nothing he can necessarily do about his current situation. I think people are just tired of him or JT in general. And then, yeah, people just want change in general. And to add to, I'd say like Toronto's like an extremely liberal place. Like there's like gender inclusive washrooms, like at Yorkdale Mall and like at TMU University. That's what you call it now. Like if you're going through the city of Toronto, it's very liberal based. But to have this like uh political switch in the city of Toronto is a huge thing for sure as Torontonians. But obviously Tristan and I moved to Calgary, but this is coming from like local Torontonians, well, in the suburbs, but still we get the understanding of the landscape, and Andy can agree too. So
Yeah, I mean, I never lived in downtown Toronto for like long periods of time, but like I live relatively close, I would say. So St. Paul's is definitely like an area that like I've been to, and there's like a lot of stuff going on there. So yeah, I mean, I would agree with Dom that it's like if everything was normal, like they would win, like the Liberals will win there by quite a large margin, right? Maybe like 25% is like considered normal. 20% is also normal, right? Like even if they only won by like 15%, I would say that they like underperformed in like a normal time. So like to lose this seat is just it's just pretty crazy to think about it. But on that note, actually there is one more thing that I wanted to bring up before we move to the second part of this story, which is a question, right? And the question is, do you feel bad for the Liberal MP candidate, Leslie Church, who lost this riding? Because, like a lot of people were kind of, I don't know, like kind of analyzing the background of Leslie Church and, trying to analyze why she lost. And her background is she's like one of the staffers of Chrystia Freeland. So, she had a helping hand in crafting a lot of the economic policies and the just policies in general that because Chrystia Freeland, not only is she the deputy prime minister, she's also the finance minister, right? So like she's occupying both roles at the moment. And deputy prime minister is kind of like the vice president, if you're watching from America and you don't know what that means. So yeah, she's kind of the chief. Imagine like the secretary of the treasury, and also the like vice president mixed in one. So that's how powerful Chrystia Freeland is right now in the Canadian government. And Leslie Church, who's the candidate who lost, she's one of the staffers for Chrystia Freeland, who helped her craft a lot of these policies, which have proven to be extremely unpopular. Right. So a lot of people were saying that like again, I'm not trying to attack Leslie Church, right? This is not personal. This is just what I've seen and what I've heard, right? Like a lot of people are saying that, these types of bureaucrats are the exact kind of people that we want to push back against, because they're the people that have at least had a hand in crafting these policies that are, taxing people for using energy, taxing people for like capital gains, and taxing people for Netflix, all this stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, do you feel that played into kind of why she lost? Is that like part of the reason, or do you think that that's overblown, and do you feel bad for her?
I don't think I necessarily feel bad for her particularly, in my experience with these elections and politicians in general, I don't think anyone really cares very much about their candidates. Maybe some people do, but by and large, in my opinion, like 90% of people are voting based on the party. And so I don't think that it's necessarily that she lost the election in the sense of the Liberals lost the election, right? So I think that it's it sucks for her obviously, but it's not really. I'm sure she'll find something else to do, I'm sure she'll be back running in the future, right? So either way, I don't think that this is that big of a deal long term for her, but I think it's definitely a loss for the Liberals, and I don't think that her working with Freeland, etc. I don't think that really plays much into her winning or losing. I think that people just genuinely just thought like, oh, the red party, oh, the blue party, oh, the orange party. So yeah, I would say that's kind of my opinion on it.
I think I also kind of agree with Tristan there. I think people are so focused on just trying to survive with the cost of living nowadays and everything being so expensive. So I think by like generalization, people would just see like, oh, red or blue. Let me pick like this color, and then they'll pick this color, and then that's about it. I'm sure like maybe the relationship and like that situation has something to do with it by like a small scale, but I think on a general big scale, it's probably just people wanting a political shift, and then that's about it. So yeah.